In the heart of Transylvania, in the fortified town of Sisora, a child was born into a world of ceaseless violence and betrayal. This child was Vlad, son of the dragon. His father, Vlad II, was a member of the Order of the Dragon, a chivalric order sworn to defend Christendom from the encroaching Ottoman Empire. It was a vow sealed in blood. Wallachia, Vlad's homeland, was a bloody chessboard, a buffer state caught between the mighty hammer of the Ottoman Empire and the anvil of the Kingdom of Hungary. Loyalty was a currency spent only for survival. To secure a fragile peace, Vlad's father made a terrible choice. He surrendered his two young sons, Vlad and his younger brother Radu, as political hostages to the Ottoman Sultan. Their destination was the heart of enemy power, the court of Sultan Mehmed II. It was a gilded cage where the boys would learn the brutal nature of power and control. Here, in the opulent but deadly environment of the Ottoman court, the paths of the two brothers would diverge forever. One would bend, the other would harden into something unbreakable. Vlad endured years of psychological torment and indoctrination, his hatred for his captors festering like a poison. He watched, he learned, and he remembered every slight, every lesson in cruelty. While Vlad resisted, his brother Radu embraced the Ottoman way of life. He found favor with the future Sultan, Mehmed II, a friendship that Vlad saw as the ultimate betrayal. Word reached the hostage prince from his homeland, a message of pure horror. His father had been betrayed by his own nobles, the boyars, and brutally murdered in the marshes near Bolteni. The fate of his older brother, Mercia, was even more ghastly. The boyars had blinded him with red-hot pokers before burying him alive. The seeds of an unimaginable revenge were sown in that moment. With the Ottomans' blessing, Vlad was briefly placed on the Wallachian throne. It was his first taste of power, a fleeting moment before his rival, supported by Hungary, drove him into exile. He was a prince with no kingdom, fueled only by the burning memory of his family's slaughter. His heart was now a cold stone, waiting for the right moment to strike. For years, Vlad wandered the courts of Eastern Europe, a ghost seeking an army. He honed his skills in warfare and political intrigue, his desire for vengeance growing with every passing day. He was a predator in waiting, learning the weaknesses of his enemies, both foreign and domestic. The boy was gone. A monster was being forged in the fires of exile. Finally, with Hungarian support, Vlad seized his chance. In the year 1456, he marched into Wallachia, reclaimed his throne, and began his true reign. His first act was not to govern, but to avenge. The boyars who had betrayed his family would soon learn the meaning of true terror. Vlad summoned the boyar families to a great Easter feast at his court in Targovist. He offered them wine and food, feigning forgiveness and a desire for unity. The nobles, arrogant and secure in their power, walked willingly into the lion's den, oblivious to the fact they were dining with their executioner. As the feast reached its peak, Vlad's demeanor turned to ice. He rose and asked the assembled nobles a simple question. "How many princes have you known?" Their proud answers, boasting of the many rulers they had outlasted and betrayed, sealed their fates. They had confessed their treachery to the one man who would offer no mercy. With a signal, his soldiers stormed the hall. The screams began, replacing the sounds of laughter and music. The boyars, old and young, were seized. None were to be spared the prince's wrath. This was not an execution. It was a purge, a brutal clearing of the board so that only one king remained. The older nobles were taken outside immediately. In the courtyard, sharpened wooden stakes had been prepared. One by one, they were impaled, their bodies lifted into the air as a grotesque display. Their dying shrieks were a symphony for their new ruler, a warning to any who would ever dare to defy him. The younger, healthier boyars and their families were spared immediate death, but only for a worse fate. They were chained together and force-marched 50 miles through rugged terrain. Their destination was a ruined fortress perched high on a cliff overlooking the Arges River. This would be their tomb. There, Vlad commanded them to rebuild the fortress using the materials of the old one. They were given no rest, no proper tools, only their bare hands and the will to survive. Many were worked to death, their bodies tossed from the cliffs into the river below. Their fine clothes rotted away until they were nothing but skeletons laboring under the whip. This fortress, rebuilt with the blood and bones of his enemies, became known as Ponari Castle. It was his eagle's nest, a symbol of his absolute power and a testament to his ruthlessness. From here, he would watch over his kingdom, a kingdom he was now cleansing with fire and fear. With the nobility crushed, Vlad turned his attention to the common folk. He desired absolute order, an order born not of loyalty, but of sheer, paralyzing terror. In the main square of Targov East, he placed a golden cup, available for anyone to drink from. It was a test of his new law. For the entirety of his reign, though thousands of thirsty peasants and travelers passed it by, the cup was never stolen. The punishment for theft was known to all: impalement. The silent, glittering cup was a more powerful guardian of order than any army, a constant reminder of the price of transgression. Vlad despised weakness and poverty, seeing them as a blight on his strong, orderly nation. He invited all the poor, sick, and vagrant people of his land to a great hall for a feast, promising to end their suffering. They came in droves, believing their prince was a savior. After they had eaten their fill, Vlad appeared and asked if they wished to be without a care in the world, to be free of all earthly troubles. They cheered in agreement. With that, he ordered the hall boarded up from the outside, with everyone still inside. Then he had it set ablaze. No one was allowed to escape the inferno. Vlad reportedly watched the building burn to the ground, the screams from within providing a chilling soundtrack to his act of social purification. He claimed he had cleansed the land of its burdens, leaving no one to suffer from poverty. He had solved the problem with fire. Foreign merchants who thought they could get away with dishonesty in Wallachia learned a swift and brutal lesson. When a group of Italian merchants complained to Vlad that a bag of gold had been stolen from them, Vlad arranged a trap. He had the original amount, plus one extra coin, returned to them. When the merchants, in their greed, failed to report the extra coin, Vlad summoned them. He revealed the thief had already been caught and was being impaled outside. Then he accused them of their own dishonesty and had the second merchant impaled right alongside the first, making a public spectacle of their crime and his unforgiving justice. His cruelty extended into the home. He demanded absolute fidelity and industriousness. Legend tells of him finding a woman's husband dressed in a shirt that was too short. When he asked his wife why, she claimed she had run out of thread. Judging her as lazy and a poor wife, he had her impaled and forced another woman to marry the widower, warning her to work harder. The ever-present threat of the Ottoman Empire loomed. Sultan Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople, sent envoys to demand the jizya, the annual tribute paid by vassal states. It was a test of Vlad's loyalty. To defy the Sultan was to invite the wrath of the world's most powerful army. When the envoys entered his court, they refused to remove their turbans, citing their religious custom. Vlad, seeing this as a sign of disrespect, smiled and said he wished to help them strengthen their customs. He then ordered his guards to seize them. The prince's guards held the terrified envoys down while carpenters were brought in. With hammers and long iron nails, they permanently affixed the turbans to the men's skulls. Vlad told them that this way, they would never have to dishonor their customs or their master by removing them. Their agonizing screams echoed through the castle. He sent the mutilated, still living envoys back to the Sultan. It was a message written in blood and bone. Wallachia would no longer bow. This act was a declaration of war, a calculated insult so profound that it guaranteed a massive Ottoman response. Vlad had just signed his nation's death warrant, and he welcomed it. Before Mehmed could retaliate, Vlad struck first. He led a small, ferocious army across the frozen Danube River in the winter of 1462. He swept through Ottoman territory in Bulgaria, a whirlwind of destruction. His campaign was not one of conquest, but of extermination and terror. He burned villages and towns to the ground, slaughtering every man, woman, and child he could find. He left nothing but ash and corpses in his wake. In a letter to the King of Hungary, he boasted of killing over 23,000 Turks and Bulgarians, carefully counting the dead but not including those who burned in their homes. Sultan Mehmed II, enraged by Vlad's audacity and the mutilation of his envoys, assembled a colossal army. It was said to be the second largest army he had ever commanded, second only to the one that conquered Constantinople. His goal was not just to defeat Vlad, but to erase him and Wallachia from the map. As the massive Ottoman force crossed the Danube and entered Wallachia, they found a dead land. Vlad had implemented a scorched earth policy. The wells were poisoned with animal carcasses, the fields were burned, and the villages were empty. The land itself had become a weapon, and the Ottoman army began to suffer from hunger and disease before ever seeing an enemy. Vlad's smaller, more agile army refused to engage in open battle. Instead, they became phantoms in the night. They conducted lightning-fast guerrilla raids on the Ottoman camps, striking a unit here, a supply line there, and then melting back into the forests and swamps. They were everywhere and nowhere, sowing chaos and paranoia. He even used biological warfare, sending people infected with leprosy and plague into the Ottoman camps, disguised as defectors. These sick men would mingle with the soldiers, spreading their deadly diseases throughout the massive army. Fear of an unseen death became as potent a weapon as any sword. Vlad's most audacious move was yet to come. Disguising himself as a Turkish Sipahi, he personally scouted the Sultan's camp. He located the royal tent, studying its layout and defenses. He was planning the unthinkable, a direct assassination attempt on Mehmed the Conqueror himself. On a moonless night, Vlad led 7,000 of his best cavalrymen in a desperate, silent charge into the heart of the Ottoman encampment. Their goal was singular: kill the Sultan. The raid, which would become known as the Night Attack, was an act of supreme, almost suicidal bravery. Chaos erupted in the massive camp. The Wallachians, screaming and slashing, created a maelstrom of panic and death. Turks, roused from sleep, began fighting each other in the darkness and confusion, believing they were surrounded. Horns blew, men shouted, and the night was filled with the sounds of slaughter. Vlad and his men fought their way towards what they believed was the Sultan's tent, but in the darkness, they had mistaken the tent of two high-ranking viziers for the royal pavilion. They slaughtered the viziers and their guards, but missed their ultimate target. Mehmed had been spared by chance. As dawn approached, Vlad sounded the retreat. The Wallachians slipped away as quickly as they had come, leaving behind thousands of dead and a shattered, demoralized Ottoman army. Though he had failed to kill the Sultan, the psychological blow was immense. He had proven that even the great Mehmed was vulnerable. The Ottoman army, though battered, pushed on towards Targov East. Mehmed was determined to capture Vlad and end the war. But Vlad had one final, horrifying spectacle prepared for him. It would be a masterpiece of psychological warfare, a vision of hell so profound it would break the will of even the most hardened soldiers. On the plains outside his capital, Vlad had created his magnum opus, the Forest of the Impaled. For a mile in every direction, there was a grotesque forest of 20,000 stakes. On each stake was the decaying, impaled body of a captured Turkish soldier or a Bulgarian peasant from his earlier campaign. Birds nested in the hollowed-out rib cages of the dead. The stench of rot and death was overpowering, a miasma that choked the air for miles. The bodies were arranged in concentric circles, with the tallest stakes in the center reserved for the highest-ranking captives. It was a perfectly ordered vision of hell. Sultan Mehmed II, the man who had shattered the walls of Constantinople, who had seen more death and war than any man alive, rode into the forest and was stunned into silence. The sight was so monstrous, so beyond the pale of human cruelty, that even he was shaken. He reportedly stared in awe and horror at the sheer scale of Vlad's evil. The conqueror of empires admitted defeat, not a military defeat, but a psychological one. He said, "I cannot win against a man who does such things, who has such a monstrous understanding of how to rule and how to terrify his enemies." He ordered his army to turn back, to retreat from this cursed land and its devil prince. Vlad had won. He had driven back the most powerful army on earth through sheer, unadulterated terror. But his victory was hollow. His country was in ruins, his treasury was empty, and his methods had earned him powerful enemies not just abroad, but closer to home. While Mehmed retreated, he left behind Vlad's younger brother, Radu the Handsome, with an army of Ottoman loyalists. Radu, popular with the boyars who were tired of Vlad's tyranny, presented himself as a stable, pro-Ottoman alternative. He promised peace and an end to the terror. Many of the remaining boyars, seeing a chance to save themselves and their fortunes, began to flock to Radu's side. Vlad's support crumbled. He was forced to flee, to seek help from his supposed ally, King Matthias Corvinus of Hungary. He was now a fugitive, hunted in the very land he had so brutally defended. When Vlad arrived in Hungary, he was not greeted as a hero who had defended Christendom. Instead, he was met with soldiers. Matthias Corvinus, seeking to appease the Ottomans and avoid a costly war, had decided to betray him. Vlad walked into a trap, his last hope for aid turning into a prison. To justify his treachery, Matthias Corvinus fabricated letters, supposedly from Vlad, offering allegiance to Sultan Mehmed. These forgeries were circulated throughout Europe, painting Vlad not as a crusader, but as a traitor to the Christian cause. The propaganda machine began to turn the defender of Wallachia into a continental monster. At the same time, printing presses in Germany began to churn out pamphlets filled with gruesome stories of Vlad's cruelty. These German stories exaggerated his deeds, adding tales of him boiling people alive, forcing mothers to eat their own children, and dining amongst the impaled. These sensationalist woodcuts and texts spread like wildfire, cementing his image as a bloodthirsty tyrant in the mind of Western Europe. Vlad was imprisoned for 12 long years. The exact conditions of his captivity are debated. Some say he was held in a dark dungeon, others that he was under a more comfortable house arrest in Buda. But for a man of his violent energy and ambition, any cage was a living hell. The Impaler was leashed. Even in prison, his cruel nature could not be suppressed. It is said that he found ways to entertain himself by catching mice and birds. He would then meticulously impale them on tiny, handmade splinters of wood, creating miniature versions of his infamous forests. His sadism was an intrinsic part of him, a compulsion that even captivity could not extinguish. After years of imprisonment, the political winds shifted again. Stephen the Great of Moldavia, Vlad's cousin and ally, convinced Matthias Corvinus to release him. Vlad was freed, but only after converting to Catholicism and marrying a member of the Hungarian royal family. He was a tool once more, to be used in Hungary's games against the Ottomans. In 1476, with Hungarian and Moldavian support, Vlad marched on Wallachia for a third and final time. His brother Radu had since died, and an Ottoman-backed prince now ruled. The people, tired of the chaos under Turkish puppets, seemed to welcome the return of their fearsome but strong ruler. His third reign lasted only a matter of months. The Ottomans could not allow a Hungarian-backed, anti-Ottoman prince on the throne of Wallachia. A large Turkish army was dispatched to deal with Vlad once and for all. His small force of loyalists was vastly outnumbered. The circumstances of his death are shrouded in mystery and conflicting accounts. The most common story is that he was ambushed and killed in a battle near Bucharest. Some say he was surrounded and cut down fighting ferociously against impossible odds. His final moments were as violent as his life. Another tale suggests a more tragic end, that in the confusion of battle, he was accidentally killed by one of his own men who mistook him for a Turk. A death not at the hands of his hated enemy, but by a simple, fatal mistake. An anticlimactic end for a man of such dramatic cruelty. Whatever the manner of his death, the outcome was the same. His body was decapitated. His head, preserved in honey, was sent to Sultan Mehmed in Constantinople as proof that the Impaler, the scourge of the Ottomans, was finally dead. The Sultan reportedly had the head displayed on a spike above the city gates for all to see. The location of his body remains a mystery. Tradition holds that the monks of Snagov Monastery, who were loyal to him, recovered his headless corpse and buried it in secret within their island church. But excavations there have found no conclusive proof. His final resting place is as elusive as his soul. In his homeland of Romania, Vlad III is not remembered as a monster. He is a national hero, a stern and brutal father of the nation who defended his people's independence against a superpower. He is seen as a harsh but necessary ruler, a man who brought order to a lawless land through extreme measures. In the West, however, thanks to the German pamphlets and later literary embellishments, his name became synonymous with pure evil. He was the quintessential bloodthirsty tyrant, a caricature of cruelty. This reputation made him the perfect vessel for an entirely new legend. In the late 19th century, an Irish author named Bram Stoker was researching Eastern European folklore for a new novel. He stumbled upon the name Dracula, a name Vlad had used, meaning son of the dragon. Stoker borrowed the name and the brutal reputation of the historical prince, merging them with vampire myths to create his immortal villain. The historical Vlad the Impaler, the voivode of Wallachia, was thus eclipsed by the fictional Count Dracula, the vampire of Transylvania. The real man's complex, brutal story of political survival, holy war, and savage vengeance was largely forgotten, replaced by a gothic fantasy. The truth, however, remains far more chilling than any fiction. Vlad's reign was a testament to the terrifying power of fear. He used cruelty not just as a tool of punishment, but as an instrument of state policy, a form of psychological warfare that could break the will of armies and nations. His legacy is a dark and enduring question. How much evil is justified in the defense of a nation, and at what point does a savior become a monster?